Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over this little wheel gun that you see in my hands right here and that you guys just saw in the intro. It is the Taurus M85 ultralight, so very lightweight gun, very similar in size to the Smith & Wesson J-frame, so concealable. Definitely designed for concealed carry. It has 5 shots of 38 special, rated for plus P, which we'll get into a little bit later on in the review. But what we're going to do first, of course, is let the dogs take a look at it right after this, and then get into all the details of the gun. And later on, we'll let you know what we think of it overall. Getting into the details, we'll start, I guess, down here at the grip and kind of work our way up and get into everything. So basically the grip here is a relatively new offering from Taurus. They had different grips for about 6 or 7 years and then just changed to these last year. I do like these grips. They're very comfortable in the hand, at least for my hand. They let you get up underneath the trigger guard about as much as possible. For a snub nose revolver, you are going to have a pinky probably hanging off the bottom if you have good size hands like I do. But the grips, they fit well. I tend to use a thumb over type grip, so for that it kind of puts my right thumb there in just the perfect position, and they're the same on both sides whether or not you're a lefty. So either way, if that's how you shoot, they're very comfortable. So I do like the grips for sure. They're relatively sticky, if that makes sense. So they're a rubber grip, but some grips, like for instance the Smith & Wesson grips here, those will get kind of slippery if your hands are really sweaty. These Taurus ones don't, at least haven't been in my experience, and I don't think I've shot this gun when it's less than 90 degrees, so I've only shot it in hot weather and have had no slipping issues, so that absolutely is a good thing. On the left side of the pistol we have the cylinder release, and it's similar to Smith & Wesson pistols where you push it forward instead of like a Colt where you pull it back. So you just push it forward and your cylinder will pop out. One thing I will mention is that when I first picked this up from the gun shop, I had never handled an Taurus 85 before I went to pick this up. And one thing that was really interesting was that when you actually rotated the cylinder out, it was extremely rough, and I wasn't sure what it was. I asked the gun shop if that was normal. They pulled 3 other ones out, and we kind of compared them all, and they were all the same. So they were very rough in terms of how the cylinder swung out. But what I did when I got home is pulled it off and then put a little bit of CLP down here, oiled it up, and kind of moved it back and forth about 10 times, and it's totally fine after that. So it was just really dry and kind of gritty. Again, we tried 4 of them. They're all the same, so I'm assuming that's normal for Taurus. The cylinder here, as you guys can see, spins freely. There's no wobble or anything like that, which is exactly what you want. Our ejector is smooth, no issues at all, no bend or anything like that. We do have a fully shrouded ejector too, which is also nice. So that way you don't really have to worry about dinging it or denting it and having it get bent like on the Smith & Wessons. That absolutely is a possibility. It has happened. If you read around there on the internet, you can see that. So I do like the fully shrouded ejector for sure. The M85 comes in a wide variety of different finishes and sizes and styles and all that stuff, and this one here is the ultralight as seen on this side of the frame. So what that indicates is that it's the lightweight version. It has the alloy frame, so basically this portion in here is all made of aluminum, and then of course our cylinder and our barrel are made of steel. So that saves you some weight over the standard all steel M85. The M85 standard steel one is, I think, just over 22 ounces, and this one here comes in right at 17 ounces. So 5 ounces in a pocket gun is a considerable amount. And one thing that you kind of get with that is if you're shooting plus P loads through this, you're going to feel it. I put a bunch of plus P loads through this without issue. It didn't have any problems, but the recoil was kind of snappy. You can see down here on the bottom of the barrel, it is rated for 38 special plus P. And although these grips are rubber and do have some give to them, it is snappy. That's just really all there is to it. So be prepared for that. If you actually plan on carrying plus Ps, I recommend rather training with them to see if that's what you're going to go with. When I carried this, and I did carry this, I guess we'll get into that now, for probably a month or so in this holster right here. This is the crossbreed inside the waistband holster. That's what we carried it in. It did well. But if you're, planning on carrying it, definitely check the loads you are carrying to see if it's the best load for you. So me personally, I went with the non plus P gold dots because they were a little bit more controllable for me. And for me, I want to be able to get follow-up shots as quickly as possible. That's just my personal opinion, and they allowed me to do it. The holster, as you guys can see here, is kind of worn in a little bit, but probably needs a little bit more breaking in, but very comfortable overall. The first gun I ever carried, I carried in a crossbeat holster, which was probably, 20 years ago? It's been a while, so I've been using them for a while. They're good holsters. So anyway, that is the aluminum frame on there, and the weight issue sort of summed up. There's a couple other issues I just wanted to touch on before we sort of do a comparison, which I will do here in just a second. So first off, this one here has the exposed hammer. It has the good check ring on there, so that way if you want to pull it back and fan it to fire in single action, you can do so. It also has the transfer bar safety in there, so that way if you drop the pistol while the hammer's cocked, it will not go off. You would need to actually depress the trigger fully in order to do that. So that is a modern safety by all means. The trigger on the gun is actually good. It's compared to other revolvers of this ilk, it's quite good actually. It's smooth in double action. It breaks right at 9 pounds, which is again pretty good. And the single action is excellent, as most revolver single actions are. Very small amount of uptake and just super crisp. Breaks right at 4.5 pounds on my scale. So the trigger is very good, much better than like a current issue Smith & Wesson J-frame, for instance. Way better. And then the sights here are fixed sights, so you can see we do have a little bit of serrations up here on the front sight, and then the rear sight is just built into the frame there. You just look down that notch, line up the front sight, and pull the trigger. There are no replacements, so if you wanted to add aftermarket sights or something like that, kind of out of luck here with the Taurus. So a couple things I sort of don't like, if you will, about it, and one thing that you get with having a sort of a budget gun like this Taurus, which it certainly is sort of the fit and finish issues. Might not be as good as some of the guns that you're paying a couple $100 more for. So just for instance, the screw here that's holding the plate in, the side plate in, as you can see, it's not actually lined up perfectly. Is that a big deal? Function wise, no, it's not a deal at all, but just something to point out. And if you look at the barrel here, this is actually common on a lot of Smith & Wesson revolvers these days as well. So believe me, it's not just a Taurus thing. I'm not sure how apparent it is, but the actual barrel when it went in is slightly to the right more than it is the left. Now, with point of impact, I did not see any shooting left or right at all at any distance, but you can kind of see it there. It's not pinned perfectly straight. So that's just something to point out. If people say, you should go out and buy a Smith & Wesson, or you should go out and buy a Ruger or something like that. Those are good guns, and for almost, in some cases, double the money of this, you should expect different things. But that's just some of the things you're going to get when you're getting a gun at a budget. You're just kind of going to have to live with it, in my opinion. That is what it is. The last thing I wanted to touch on is this little safety lock right here on the hammer. So it comes with a lock, as unfortunately a lot of revolvers do these days. And what that does is if you actually stick it in there, you can disable the gun. It'll lock the hammer down, and if the hammer is locked down, you can't pull the trigger at all, and the gun is inoperable. So that is an option for those of you guys that say have kids and want to lock it up in case of unintended uses. Me personally, I just wish it wasn't there, but unfortunately that's the modern world that we live in. One day I'm going to do a comparison of all these little revolvers just so you guys can sort of go through all the details and figure out which one you personally want to go with. But we have a few here. We have 3 Smith & Wesson J-frames, the Ruger LCR, of course, Smith & Wesson Model 60, which is a 357 all-steel gun. Super awesome gun. Really like that one. And then, of course, the Taurus. So there's certainly pros and cons to each, right? So weight-wise, no doubt the Ruger LCR wins. It's the lightest of the bunch out there. The Smith & Wessons, these are all currently made production Smith & Wessons. These have all been made probably 2010 or later, and as you guys can see, they have the lock just like I talked about earlier with the Taurus, just in a different position. The triggers on these out of the box are terrible. It's something I've talked about in different videos. The Taurus absolutely has a better trigger than any of the 3 Smiths for sure. The Ruger trigger is pretty good. I would say those are kind of comparable. They're different in terms of how they function completely, but in terms of having a decent trigger and being able to get shots on target, those two are probably about the same. And then if you have like an old school gun like this gun I think was from like the 70s or 80s. These had really good triggers as well, but different animal all around. You can see though, I am a fan of the 5-shot 30 special or 38 special 357 mag revolvers. I think they're awesome, and we'll get into some of those reasons here later in the review, but that's kind of how they compare size wise. One thing I generally do like to do though is put Hogue grips. You guys can probably see that Hogue grip, Hogue grip, Hogue grip on a lot of my guns, and I don't think they make them for the 85, so it's certainly a downside. However, I think most people that are getting the Taurus are probably just going to stick with the factory grips. But in terms of a size comparison, and just because I want to show it off, here is a Colt Python. That's my 4-inch Python that we have there. And you can see one of these guns with these small, it's not a J-frame, but J-frame size frames is just so much more concealable than like a full-size duty revolver would be, of course, represented here by the Colt Python. The revolver is compatible with the HKS 36 speed loaders like we have here. I know a lot of guys use these. I use them. They work great, and they're very reasonably priced. You can buy a bunch of them, stick them in like a cargo pocket if you want to carry extra ammo. But one thing that isn't great about the grips, although they are very comfortable to shoot, is that when you actually go to use your speed loader like this, you can get the rounds in there, but you can't get it all the way in, and that's because it's hitting the grip here, just off to the right there. So what you can do though, of course, is if you have it angled down, just pull it, shake it, and usually they'll pop right in there, but you could have an errant one just like that. But the actual speed loader itself won't go all the way in like it would with a lot of other guns, just due to that grip design. I think I mentioned that I've had this gun in for a little bit now, and I actually wasn't planning on doing the review right now. However, a sale that's going on right now actually prompted me to get this review up so that those folks out there who are looking at one of these, possibly picking one up, could go ahead and take advantage of it. So right now, over at Brownells, this week, they have this pistol, or this revolver rather, on sale for $249 shipped, with the code down here on the bottom of your screen. So if you're watching this weeks from now, too late. But if you're watching this as it goes up, and I think through Friday, that sale price should be good, provided they don't sell out, of course. So I wanted to get this up just because that price is a really good one, considering what they usually go for. So typically, I think the MSRP on these is like $371. They're generally going to go for around the $300 mark, plus or minus, 10, 20 bucks, depending on where you pick it up. So with that, they're generally going to be $100 to $150 cheaper than the Ruger LCR or one of the Smith & Wesson J-frame models that you guys just saw. So why would you get one, right? Well, number one, a lot of people are on a budget. So $150 compared to a gun like this that's going to cost $250 is significant, almost double the price of the gun. So if you're on a very limited budget, but you just need something to defend yourself with, I think a lot of people are in that category, then that's something to take a look at. Revolvers, generally speaking, are very reliable, and this one here has been 100% reliable. It's got some use on it, as you guys can probably see. We got just over 600 rounds through it, majority of that being the Freedom Munitions 158 grain load, and probably 40 plus P loads. Those were the Winchester Defender loads, and then also the Remington, it's 125 grain, I believe, plus P load. We put some of that, I think a box of 20 through it. And then just those Spear Gold dots, probably 10 of those just to verify function. So that is what went through it. It had obviously zero issues with any of it. We were able to hit our targets, which is really what is most important. I didn't bench rest this one, kind of because it's a concealed carry gun. Just for your reference out there, I'm generally shooting at 8-inch steel plates at about 12 to 15 yards in the shooting scenes that you guys see me doing with pistols, particularly with this one. So I might have missed one or two here and there, but for the pace and not being as familiar with this as some of you guys out there may be, I think I was able to keep it on target pretty well, considering especially most of those are in double action. So it is shootable. It's absolutely not a precision gun that I would want to take a lot of headshots at 50 yards with, but for concealed carry gun, for get up off me type of action, the snub nose revolver has always done pretty well at that. And this one here, from what I've seen, is no exception. So let's talk about Taurus in general. Yeah, let's get into it, right? For years, I actually didn't review any Taurus guns because I knew that you gun guys out there, you serious gun guys, were going to be mad and make comments down below about Taurus. And that's fine. You guys can do that. Probably some of you already have at this point in the video. But something changed that, and that was number one when I did my Taurus PT-111, I believe, review. It's my number one review on Full 30. It's, I think, my third most watched video ever on YouTube, and on Facebook it went crazy too. It has something like 400,000 views on Facebook. So for me, those are really good numbers in terms of people watching. So that told me, number one, people want to see Taurus reviews. Then I went out to SHOT Show, which I mentioned this in my last Taurus review, which was the judge. And 3 of the 4 Uber drivers I had, because it was SHOT Show, they knew everyone was in town for SHOT. 3 of the 4 Uber drivers I had said that they only own 1 gun, and they were Taurus guns. So people are buying these guns, and I think oftentimes, and this isn't a knock on Taurus or anything, I think just the way that they're marketed and the price of them as well, is that a lot of people who aren't like serious gun guys just get Tauruses because it's a name they know and it's reasonably priced when they go to the gun store. So I thought to myself, well, those folks need information on guns as well. So I wanted to start reviewing more and more Tauruses. We had, of course, a couple problems with the judge that we mentioned in that review, but we've had absolutely 0 problems at all with this gun. This gun's ran flawless and 0 issues at all. Additionally, one thing I should point out is that right now, I'm not sure how long this will last. I'll put a link down below for those of you guys looking to take advantage of this. With every pistol purchased, you get an NRA membership for a year. So that comes with it from Taurus. So I think that's certainly a good thing. I know some folks out there are kind of anti the NRA, even gun folks, but I think the NRA, obviously they're our largest voice out there, and Taurus supporting gun rights, which particularly is important for these concealed carry guns, which has been sort of a revolution in America over the last 20 years, is a good thing. They're giving that to anybody who purchases a Taurus pistol for a limited time. I'm not sure on all the details. Again, it will be down below, but that is, $35 NRA membership just for picking up the pistol. That's certainly a good thing. Anyway, the link for everything that we talk about will be down below. That pretty much sums it up. So far, seems to work just fine, seems to shoot just fine. Have no issues with it at all, and the price point is pretty attractive. If you guys have any questions about the wheel gun or anything like that, you can always post down below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page as always, but thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys in the next video.